Josh Allen and the wide receiving core lead the Bills to a dominant victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and Justin Godwin.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. My name is Justin. I will be your host today, and we are going to be breaking down the Bills' dominant victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we get started, just wanted to mention this episode is brought to you by 26 Shirts. If you haven't checked out 26 Shirts yet, they have some awesome t-shirt designs, a lot of Buffalo themed stuff, and more importantly, they do some great work donating within the community. So just overall, just a really great brand to support. So go ahead and check them out if you haven't done so already. So like I said, tonight we're going to be talking about that game against the Steelers. The Bills win one at home 38-3, and boy, the only thing I can think of for like the second half of this game is how recently it was that we were on the other side of games like this. And, you know, we're talking 7-8 years ago, I'd be watching a game like this and it'd be getting out of hand. And by halftime, I'm ready to take a little nap because the game's pretty much already decided. And just where we are now from where we came from, it's so great to be on the other side of a game like that. And I mean, all around, this was just, you know, you don't get to a 38-3 score with, you know, only one side of the ball contributing. This is all phases of the game kind of firing on all cylinders for the most part. But we're going to start out with the offense and start with the guy, the myth, the man, the legend, Josh Allen. It goes 20 for 31, 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, an interception, and a quarterback rating of 134.1. And ladies and gentlemen, I say all those numbers, and we're talking about a quarterback that didn't play the fourth quarter of this game for the most part. Did all of that work in 3 quarters, and I mean, honestly, when he was in the game, they didn't really take their foot off the pedal. The last series that he was in the game, he had the 40-something yard completion to Diggs. So it's not like they were really coasting at any point. But, I mean, 424 yards through the air, and he took a quarter off. Oh, and not to mention, he added another 42 yards on the ground. And this was a game where it was the type of running that I love to see from Josh Allen. It was really only 1 or 2 design play calls for him, and the rest were kind of the out of structure. The plays breaking down, and he makes something happen to keep the chains going. I only have one complaint on his running today, and that was, I believe the game was about 31-3 at this point. And it was a 3rd and 4, and he ran and easily got the 4 yards, and then it's kind of coming up, and there's like 3 defenders circling in around him, and he looked like he thought about sliding and then decided not to. And just a situation where, especially in a game that's kind of out of hand like that, like I just want to see him get down, but I know it's hard to take the juice out of him at that point. Obviously can't put up those numbers without the receiving core, and this was a group that I kind of went into this game having a little bit of concern. It was one of the positions kind of similar to the cornerback room where it was like, man, when this all shakes out, we're gonna have a ton of depth at the position, and then all of a sudden 1 or 2 injuries, and you start looking at, do we have to add somebody, and you know, what's the plan from here? You know, you go into this game, we're down Isaiah McKenzie with a concussion. We lose Crowder for the year with an ankle injury. Kumerow still dealing with some lingering ankle issues. So we're looking at a game where we haven't seen Gabe Davis 100% for a couple weeks. We have guys coming up to play that we haven't really seen yet, and Khalil Shakir and Isaiah Hodgins, and just overall great performances from the receivers. And not to mention Dawson Knox also misses this game. So we're down the top tight end as well. And we'll kind of go through everybody here. Gabe Davis obviously had a monster day. My vote for the player of the game, and I believe he's going to end up being our the podcast consensus pick for player of the game. I mean, it's easy to pick Josh Allen because he's the one, throwing the balls to make this happen. But, I mean, we're talking Gabe Davis goes out and has 3 catches, 170 yards, and 2 of them are for touchdowns. The 98-yard grab to start the game. I was running around before the game started, and I missed the kickoff and about the first 3 plays of the game, and I looked down at the score, and it's already 7-0. What the hell did I miss? It turns out I missed a 98-yard touchdown grab for Gabe Davis, which was an absolute thing of beauty. We all know about his, down the field abilities and some of his, insane sideline catches. But this catch here, and not only does he get behind the secondary, his primary defender goes down. But I never really think of Gabe Davis as this dude that's got like sweet long speed, and there was another defender trying to catch up with him, and it looked to me like he was pulling away a little bit. So a little bit more juice there than I really think about Gabe Davis having. And then on his second touchdown grab, this is more what I think of when I think of Gabe Davis, as that was a beautifully thrown ball. He kind of one-hands it in, and that's a contested catch, and that's not a slouch player in the secondary, matched up against him. That's Minkah Fitzpatrick, the dude that's been to Pro Bowls, comes down with a lot of interceptions every year, and Gabe Davis just straight big boys him. No, that's my ball. And still a lot of football to play this year, but I think that one's going to be my one to beat for a while on my favorite touchdown of this year. Diggs, to me, in this game, this happens with him from time to time. I kind of felt like he was having a little bit of a quiet game, and then all of a sudden I look down on the stat sheet and I'm like, oh, he's at 70-something yards. But he ends the day with 8 catches himself, another 100-yard game, 102 yards receiving, and he adds a touchdown as well. Obviously, when that top 3 right there is firing on all cylinders, everybody's healthy, that combination of Allen, Diggs, and Gabe Davis is absolutely unbelievable. And then we sprinkle in Khalil Shakir. He's a dude that if you listen to the show, I've been very high on since we drafted him. I've kind of been waiting for him to get his opportunity, and obviously you hate to see it, happen through injuries with McKenzie and Crowder going down. But I thought he stepped in, made just an immediate impact, and wide receiver is a position that you don't always see players transition to in the NFL right away. Sometimes it takes a little while. I think that trend's kind of been switching. We see, some really talented receivers in year one a lot more often than we used to. But he came in and, he wasn't just making routine catches. He had a couple of really tough grabs in there. He had the one along the sidelines where he kind of showed that ability that makes him the kick return and punt return option right now. Just being able to move in the open field and, having those loose hips and making a couple guys miss. So I was really impressed with him and in the action that he got today, and that kind of makes me feel better going forward. There's been guys that I've been high on coming out that I've completely completely whiffed on. I've been wrong about. But Shakir, I was very excited about, and it's always good to see, kind of, I guess the proof of concept there. Granted, it is a limited sample size. It's only one game. Bills were balling out today, so we'll see what happens there going forward. But I thought that was a great debut for him. And then Isaiah Hodgins. For the life of me, I can't recall if he's ever actually played in a regular season game for the Bills. I know he's kind of always, his whole career, he's kind of been dealing with injuries and kind of on that roster bubble. Do we keep him around through an injury? All that stuff. So I believe this was the first game I ever saw him actually suit up, and kind of similar to Shakir, he went out and had a pretty nice day for himself. 4 catches, 41 yards. Couple of those he moved the chains and was kind of just that possession receiver, making the play when the play comes to you. And he's not going to be in a top 2-3 option in this offense, but when his number was called, he was making the grabs and he was making plays. So encouraged by what I saw from him today. And then finally, as far as the receiving game went, I'll wrap it up with Quentin Morris, who he kind of made some noise through preseason training camp and was able to kind of stick onto this roster. And I wasn't expecting a ton from him going into this game. And overall, I thought he had a pretty good game. The one catch that he had over the middle that he kind of laid out for was a pretty ridiculous grab in general, let alone for a backup tight end that hasn't seen a ton of work. Obviously, the black mark on his game today is he does have fumble at the goal line, and ends up costing the Bills 7 points. I mean, he fumbled that going into the end zone, so that would have been an easy touchdown right there. Instead, it ends up going the other way. Obviously, not really a game that ends up mattering all that much, but we know how McDermott feels about ball security. And, end of the day, that kept the Bills from putting up a 40 burger. So, like I said, obviously in the grand scheme of this game, it doesn't end up mattering all that much, but still not something that you'd like to see. The running back group, it kind of remains Singletary and then the other guys. Singletary's really grabbed the reins as far as, put this one in some severe air quotes, the bell cow of this offense. I mean, we're talking 6 carries. And I think that's kind of what we've seen from this regime, and they talk about the balance with the run game an awful lot. I know McDermott was talking about it this week of, wanting to see more production out of the run game, and then between all of the running backs, I think we see 11 total carries, I believe it was. There was 6 for Singletary, 4 for James Cook, and a lot of those coming towards the end of the game. And I believe Zach Moss only had 1 carry. So I'm starting to think that this might actually be the balance that they're referring to. As long as that offense passing game is firing, I don't think they're too concerned about the success of the run game. But for what it's worth, Singletary did average 7 yards a carry. So, when the defense is expecting pass every play, maybe Singletary's kind of able to capitalize on that. What I did like to see from this group is James Cook get that scamper off for 24 yards and a touchdown. Another guy that I was very excited to add to this offense, and it's been through very limited work, but we've seen him struggle through the first few weeks of the season. It kind of reminds me of one of the players that was able to outrun everybody in college, and the skill set's there, but kind of has to figure out the speed to the NFL. So I feel like getting that touchdown in this game might let him relax a little bit, play a little bit more loose, and hopefully it's kind of, the coming out party, if you will, and we see a lot more from him going forward. I guess that's my biggest gripe with this game is, having a 28-point lead coming out of the half or whatever. I think it was 28 at the time. Just kind of giving some of those younger guys a little bit more looks and seeing what we have there. Maybe that's a strategy thing to really bust them out down the line, but felt like the perfect game for me to kind of take a look at some guys that you haven't seen too much of. And then we'll wrap up on the offensive side of the ball with the big boys up front, and I thought this was a great game for the offensive line. Obviously, we talked about Josh Allen's numbers. You can't do that if you're getting hit every play, taking sacks, being rushed through your reads, all that. Obviously, we're not seeing a ton of production in the run game, but I mean, for what it's worth, the amount of carries that we did carry, we had success on the ground. So I'm not ready to say that they had a great day run blocking. I know that's kind of an area where the team is struggling a bit. But when you're talking about Josh Allen being able to throw 31 times, throw over 400 yards, and he wasn't sacked, and I believe the entire game he was only hit once. So they did a great job keeping the quarterback clean and really letting Josh go out there and have the day that he did. So I'm going to take a quick break. When to come back, we're going to touch on special teams, and then we'll move into the defensive side of the ball. Stick around.
Hey, this is Bills Vader. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, and thank you again for joining me on tonight's episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. We're going to jump back in and kind of talk about the special teams and the defense. And again, overall, like I said before, you don't get to a 38-3 win with, the team not firing on all cylinders. That being said, I do think there was a few hiccups on special teams. I'm not overly concerned with going forward. I think special teams is one of the areas of the game where the ball can bounce weird, and you get some of the weird plays that happen in football end up happening on special teams. But we did see a blocked kick today. I believe it was Cameron Hayward that blocked the kick. Never like to see a blocked kick because that does end up being a live ball. It can be a weird play where it can really change the momentum of the game. And that happened fairly early in the game. I think it was only 3-7 at the time, something like that. So definitely had the opportunity to be like an early momentum swinger. In the context of this game, I don't think it would have ended up tipping the scales if anything happened there. But you never know in football. Those are kind of opportunities you don't want to present to the other team. I thought Shakir coming in, filling in for Crowder in return duties, I thought he looked good. He was smart with the ball. There was one punt that he ran up on and let it go over his head. Steelers made a great play downing it at the 1-yard line. Honestly, I don't fault him for that one. I think he made the right decision, thinking it would be a touchback. And when it bounces on the ground and rolls and it's headed into the end zone and doesn't make it there, that's a great play by the opposing special teams. I think he made the right call there. And, sometimes the other team makes a great play too. So I don't fault him for that. And with the ball in his hands, I thought he showed some good vision and kind of flashed what we saw a little bit earlier in preseason of being capable of filling those roles. On the other side of the ball, Granted, we only punted twice. For what it's worth, I thought both of Sam Martin's punts should have been downed at the 1 yard line. The first one, I believe they were both Saran Neal. He had it right there and kind of touches his hands and slipped out, and he kicked it through the back of the end zone. And, that one would have been, a great play to get it down at the 1. But then the following punt, it would have been a great play to down at the 1. But I think if there were a little bit more on the line at this point in the game, maybe we see, Saran Neal dive for it, bat it backwards, something like that. In this situation, it was, we're talking something like 3 minutes left in a blowout win. No need to really be laying out for one of those, and actually glad to see him not do that. But it's nice to see that for a team that's probably not going to punt a ton this year. The opportunities that Sam Martin did have were kind of both right on the cusp of being downed, not only inside the 5 yard line, but like at the 1. And we're also talking a day where wind was a factor in Orchard Park. So I guess glad to see that we're still not punting a lot, and glad to see that when we had to do it, we were able to do it pretty well, despite them both ending up being touchbacks. Want to give a shout out to the big guys up front in this game. Coming in against a team like Pittsburgh, they have 2 running backs. Warren's been kind of that change of pace back with Najee Harris, and obviously we know who Najee Harris is and what he's capable of in this league. Really, we're able to bottle up the run today, and I mean, you keep a guy like Najee Harris, I believe he ended up with 20 yards on 11 carries. That's a really good running back there, and I know Pittsburgh is having some offensive line struggles this year, and that's probably contributing to it. You can have the best running back in the league, but if he's not getting holes, you're not going to see a ton of production. But that being said, averaging less than 2 yards a carry on this defense. Warren came in and he picked up some yards. I think he ended up with like 24 yards on 5 carries, something like that. Kind of garbage time at the end of the game where our defense is selling out to stop the pass, and they got some stuff underneath that we let them get some stuff in the run game, whatever. But overall, just a really great day defending the run. We see another 3 sacks added by this team, 2 of them from the defensive line. Von Miller gets another one, and had a little injury scare with him early in the game. Obviously, you don't want to see any of these guys go down, but the heart beats a little bit differently when you see it's a guy like Von Miller, so it's glad to see him able to get back in the game. He picks up a sack, and then Epinesa picks up a sack as well. I don't have much to say about these big guys other than it was just an all-around great performance. We're seeing them consistently get after the quarterback like we didn't really see last year. And this is kind of, for me at least, this is the return of investment from Brandon Beane. We've seen him tinker with this defensive line pretty much the entire time since he's come to Buffalo. And it kept feeling like, oh, this is the group. No, this is the group. We got the group right now. We're starting to see contributions from Epinesa. Groot's been playing really well this year. You had a guy like Von Miller. I mean, you add the pieces to this defensive front that we've added and have some of the younger guys take that next step, and you add it to a defense that was already number 1 last year. Like, it's an embarrassment of riches. As far as the linebackers go, I thought Milano had a stellar game. It was, I mean, it's kind of classic Milano at this point. It's kind of every time a tackle's being made, a play's being made, Milano's in the area of the ball. And then Terrell Dodson filling in for Tremaine Edmonds, who wasn't able to go today. I thought he had a great game, filled in really nicely for Edmonds. Ends up leading the team in tackles, and he added a sack himself. So I'm not going to sit here on this podcast and be like, oh, that's how easy you can replace Edmonds. I think Edmonds does bring a lot of value to the team. I think this is more showing the depth that Brandon Beane has built on this roster. That if somebody does go down, and we've seen this all across the team, we're dealing with injuries that we haven't seen in years. The length of the injury reports has been ridiculous. And you always hear, next guy up. And on a lot of teams around the league and teams that we've had in the past, the top guy goes down and the next guy up is a severe drop-off from who you have. So it's great to see the depth that Beane has cultivated on this roster to really be able to step up and have that next man up mentality. The secondary, I thought overall had a pretty good day as well. This is something for me where you need some context to the stats. Because if you take a quick look at it, you see, a rookie quarterback came in against this great Bills defense and was able to go out and throw for 327 yards. It's great. He came in and his first start in the league, he was able to go for over 300. When you throw a little context on it, it's on 52 pass attempts, 34 completions, and an average completion of 6.3 yards. I mean, I'll take that all day. And this is against the Steelers team that, they're kind of in a quick rebuild period right now. But the talent that they've accumulated at receiver, I mean, they got some guys there. You're talking Chase Claypool. George Pickens looks like he's going to be an absolute stud. I mean, they have talent at receiver, and we're talking a secondary where obviously Hyde is out for the season. You have Poyer missed this game. Trey White's still out. Benford's still out. You're playing pretty thin here, and the guys that you have come in and, I mean, overall still had a great day. Kyer Elam comes down with his first career interception, so congratulations to Kyer. Obviously, that was kind of rounding out the first half. Game was already pretty out of control, but Pittsburgh had a chance to put some points on the board going into halftime, and Elam took that away from them. And then earlier in the first half, it was like too great of a play by Dane Jackson and DeMar Hamlin. They were both right where they were supposed to be, and both in position to make the interception, and both of them being in too good of a position to get the interception ends up costing them both an interception. So, I mean, it'd be great if this was, like a baseball thing where you could, call the ball, but it's all happening so fast. So two of them kind of collide into each other, and the rest is history. But overall, like I said, we can't come away with this game with too many complaints. For as dominant of a victory it is, we're still talking about a game where we left a lot on the field, and it was kind of self-inflicted wounds still. I mean, I just talked about the Dane Jackson and DeMar Hamlin kind of coming together and, not getting what should have been a pretty easy interception. We saw Josh Allen's one interception for the day. That was kind of a touch pass that just didn't have enough on it and came up just short. That easily could have been a touchdown. And then obviously the Quentin Morris fumble at the goal line. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, his momentum was bringing him into the end zone. That was maybe he was down at the one, maybe. But from my eyes, that was 6 points that came right off the board, just for not securing the ball there. So I mean, in a game that we win by 35, just at an easy, quick glance, there was at least 17 points left on the board, if you add in the blocked field goal there. So obviously I'm not going to sit here and have too many complaints about a dominant win like that. But it's kind of, this has to be Sean McDermott's dream of, being able to have the guys excited from a win like that and get them into the meeting room on Monday and be like, yeah, good win, guys. We got some stuff to work on. We got some stuff to clean up. So always good to have, in my opinion, there's always good to have a few blunders in there for things that you need to work on going into the next game. Because we do have the Chiefs up next. And I don't know about you guys, but this has been circled on my calendar since the schedule came out. Obviously, we have a history developing with the Chiefs, and we haven't forgotten about the 13 seconds. So, huge game coming up next week. Tune in for next week's episode. We are going to be talking about that game. You can follow us on any social media. Just search up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. If you ever want to get involved with the show, have questions you want us to talk about, anything like that, leave a comment. While you're there, go ahead, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you're not missing any of the content. If you want to reach me personally, you can reach me at jgods22. And if you want to talk to my partner in crime, Andrew, you can find him at 2changs. Thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode. Go Bills!